Ya de nuevo, estamos aquí en el módulo 3 y ya vamos a tratar esta sección de encuentro cultural. Estamos en la página 8 y 9. ¿Okay? 8 y 9, sección encuentro cultural. Y el mundo hispano, ¿okay? La geografía, los mapas, las personas. Let's begin by taking a look at the link that is there associated with this video. You should have visited that. And it's an image of the entire world. And I want you to look at that just to make sure that you know where everything is situated and also the relative size. Because we're going to look at the other maps in just a second, and sometimes we might not really know how big Mexico is or how big Spain is or where Spain is. Because, you know, in the maps that we'll look at, Spain is as big as the United States. So, anyway, now that you've taken a look at that map, let's go ahead and in the textbook, just turn to Roman numeral 15 through 18. And let's just take a quick look at some of those maps. You see on Roman numeral 15, it's a map of South America. And so look at some of those countries. There are 9 countries in South America that are Hispanic. And which is the one that isn't? Well, there's 4 of them actually, right? Brazil and Guyana, Suriname, and Guayana Francesa. So those have other official languages other than Spanish. That's why they're not Hispanic. And so those colors on the maps help you to know. So, por ejemplo, Chile es un país hispano. ¿Y cuál es la capital de Chile? Muy bien, es Santiago. Perú es otro país. ¿Dónde está Perú? Okay. ¿Y la capital de Perú es?
¿Lima?
Correcto. ¿Quién dijo Lima? Ay, muy buen estudiante ahí. Lima. Y también tenemos otro país, Venezuela. ¿Dónde está Venezuela? Ahí hacia el norte. ¿Y cuál es la capital? Sí, es Caracas. Ok. En la próxima tenemos México. México. We see a stress mark on that E. Now, do you remember? I think we've talked about this, maybe not. What does the stress mark mean on those words? Do you have an idea? I'll tell you. It means that the rules have been broken and that you need to stress that syllable of the word. Okay, with few exceptions, that is what the written stress mark means. So instead of saying Mexico, we see México. Okay. The capital, ¿cuál es la capital de México? Sí, es el Distrito Federal. Este es el país en Norteamérica, solo un país hispano en Norteamérica. ¿Cuáles son los 3 países en el Caribe? Los 3 países. Puerto Rico, ¿cuál es otro? Cuba, no es Cuba, Cuba. ¿Y cuál es la capital de Cuba? Muy bien, La Habana. No es La Habana, La Habana. Muy bien. ¿Y el otro? ¿Cuál es el otro? A ver, estudiante. Muy bien, es la República Dominicana. República Dominicana. Otra vez el acento escrito. Tenemos un país africano. ¿Cuál es? Sí, está ahí en la página 18. Roman numeral 18, Guinea Equatorial. Guinea Equatorial. If you go back to that first map, you see it there on the equator line, right on Africa's continent. Y finalmente el país de Europa, Portugal, ¿no? No, no es Portugal, es España, es el otro país hispano. Ok, ahora regresamos a la página 8 y 9. En esta sección en los Estados Unidos, so where do we find the most populated areas for an Hispanic population? What states had those? Yeah, and I don't see North Carolina mentioned there. Florida, they're all on the other coast, right? Right there next to Mexico. So we have Texas, Nuevo Mexico, almost 50% are Hispanic. That's an impressive percentage. Go down to Spain, you read some interesting things about Spain. Remember that as you look at that country, it was divided up, and as the Romans populated that country, they brought in Latin, and then each of those regions started to develop their own flavor of Latin. That's why you had those other. What are some of those languages that were mentioned? Galicia. ¿Qué más? Sí, en Galicia es el galiciano, el gallego, mejor dicho. También tenemos el euskera. Y también obviamente portugués en Portugal. Okay. Now in 7-Eleven, they are invaded. Spain is invaded, and so you have a tremendous impact from the Moorish impact from Africa going into Spain. It's 700 years later, almost 800 years later, when that influence is, well, talk about the cleansing, as it were, and all of the Moors are finally ridden out of the country. They're out of the country, but anyway, the influence stays there. We talked a little about Mexico. Now you see the population there, 8 million people. Now that is kind of Mexico City proper, but outside, there's greater metropolitan Mexico City is around 22 million people. That's a lot of people. New York is like New York City proper is like 7 million. Greater metropolitan is like 14 million. I can't remember. Chicago's like 3 million, and and then I don't know what the greater metropolitan. So what's the biggest city? That would be the greater metropolitan area of Tokyo at about 30 million people. All right. Other questions? Panama Canal, why it's so important? I think that's clear from the description. That cuts off most of your trip instead of having to go clear around. Now, Puerto Rico, one thing you were supposed to consider is what about English and Spanish, and should they have, should we have 2 official languages or not? And well, I'm sure you have your opinion. And I'm sure it's a good one. So, finally, in Latin America, South America, we have the 9 countries that we talked about briefly, the capitals. Interesting things, which way, you might be in hurricane season right now, depending on when you're taking this course. If we're here in North America, in the Northern Hemisphere, which way do our storms go? Do they go clockwise? Or do they go counterclockwise? Counterclockwise. But if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, they go clockwise. Now, I don't know about the toilets and flushing. I never figured that out. I don't think that's true. But what's the other thing? And then the moon. You look up at the moon and tilt to the side, and it looks like there's a person's face there. Well, it's the opposite when you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And then we talked, of course, about if I want to go skiing here in the Northern Hemisphere, which months am I going to go? November, December through March. Opposites in the Southern Hemisphere. That'd be the toasty time of the year and not a lot of skiing going on. So that is then giving you an overview of the Hispanic world. And we will, of course, be focusing on the various countries as we move throughout. That should give you a good general overview.